All right, Madam Chair, members of the commission, if you all are ready, we can get started. 5:30 work session is an informational one. Mr. Hurd here is to discuss metal roofing and the acceptance of it within the historic districts. I don't think, Richard, you don't have a presentation, do you? Okay, perfect. So
I do. Richard.
let you go ahead.
Yeah. Somebody should. I'll share it. So thank you guys for your time and listening to this. This presentation has also been presented in the past over 10 years ago when the guidelines were rewritten and the sustainability guidelines were introduced into the code. So it came along with that, and it also has come along with applications that I've done over the years for more contemporary homes, and then homes where metal roof or metal as a material may be more appropriate as we look at making architecture of its time rather than mimicking history. So this is a lot of just words. I'm gonna skip through and grab some highlights, and then there's some actual sections in the guidelines that I've highlighted in pages coming up that will be more to the point. So this is just speaking of kind of the evolution of materials and how metal roofs used to be an actual roofing material and wood shakes, and then that kind of evolved over time, zinc and tin, and then at some point we started sticking small stones on petroleum products and called it asphalt roofing, and then that became kind of the roofing material of choice, which unfortunately, and this is older data, 1.36 billion pounds of waste asphalt roofs is added to our landfills. So thinking about metal roofs as the sustainable choice, it's recycled material to start with. It can be recycled after, and not only that, it's lasting 2 times as long, 3 times as long as asphalt roofing. And then the Field Guide to American Houses, which I'm sure you all have on your nightstands and have read cover to cover numerous times. This goes into depth again about sheet iron coated with zinc, tin, lead to prevent rust. It was a relatively inexpensive and plentiful. So this is, early 19th century, and then stronger corrugated panels. And then one of the photos I'm going to show you in a minute is actually what I think is an original metal roof in the north end. And then I've just linked to some preservation briefs from the National Park Service about roofing, metal roofing, copper roofing, of course, is a metal, but sheet iron, it's going over some of those statistics again, 1700s, 1800s, metal roofs were being used. Galvanizing with zinc to protect the metal base from rust was developed in France, 1837. Tin plate, commonly called tin roofing. And then just kind of moving on, I know you guys get the gist and kind of see where I'm going. I don't need to read this all verbatim. Zinc came into use in the 1820s. At the same time, tin plate was becoming popular. And then roll roofing and asphalt came into being early 1900s. So then let me just skip ahead here to, that was some of the stuff I was just flipping through. But here we are in the guidelines itself. I bring this one up. This is more about roof forms, but it does mention on the left side there, some of the more common materials are wood shingles, clay tile, comp materials such as asphalt or asbestos, which obviously we don't use anymore, shingles, tin, and slate. So within the guidelines, it's mentioning that tin is a common roofing material. And then we go to, in materials here, policy use similar building materials. And then I'm going to go through a bunch of slides really fast to show you that metal and metal roofing is a common building material, a similar building material found within the district or districts. And then we're going down and it's talking, I'm kind of generalizing material as a material, whether it's a window wrap or a roof or a siding. And that's where I'm pointing out aluminum siding is generally inappropriate, but will be closely scrutinized for appropriateness on the site. And then next one here, then we get into, and what happened, I think, when the guidelines had the sustainability components pushed into them or integrated into them, might be a better way to put it, is that there's a little bit of jumping around between material sections and then material sections also within sustainability. So that's what we're looking at here. As far as green building materials, using products which have minimal environmental footprint, use green building materials and those which improve environmental performance that have been proven effective in the local climate. So then we go down, appropriate materials are easy. All of these apply to metal roof, easy to maintain, proven to be durable in the climate, long lifespans, recyclable. Asphalt is not recyclable. So the argument could be made asphalt is not an appropriate material according to this. Made from recycled or repurposed material, same thing. Yes, metal, no asphalt. And then not manufactured using harsh chemicals, that could go down 2 rabbit trails, one for asphalt, one for metal. You know, none of them probably are better than the wood shakes that we used 150 years ago. And then do not off-gas harsh chemicals. Metal does not. If you've had a new roof put on, you know, asphalt does. And then more materials, designing for sustainability, renewable materials, proven durability. It's kind of saying the same thing. Like I was saying, it's kind of coming from a couple different sections, but all within the guidelines. Many of these materials are similar to those used historically, but others may be somewhat different. In either case, it's important to use green building materials, which maintain compatibility. And then down at the bottom of that page, all those points again, metal in a different section, and then asphalt, not appropriate, synthetic materials not proven to be durable, which are difficult to repair and recycle. Materials which are manufactured with harsh chemicals, materials which off-gas harsh chemicals. So that's kind of the written stuff and some context and actual verbiage from the guidelines. And now this exhibit, these are metal roofs in the historic district. So the guidelines say don't use materials that aren't similar to what's in the district. This exhibit is showing that it exists all over the districts, in all districts, and on contributing homes, on non-contributing homes, on new construction built in the district and approved through this commission relatively recently in some of the cases. But I'll just scroll through some of these. There's obviously an old, maybe original roof on the single car garage. Another one. And you know, that's right, prominent north end numbered street. This is not in the historic district, but City of Boise made the choice, surrounded by historic district, to use standing seam metal. Standing seam metal, numbered street. This is just an addition to bring up the point that oftentimes we see applications come through here that the metal roof is an accent roof or something like that. And it seems pretty commonly approved. This was a brand new home, completely metal, standing seam roof. Standing seam, that's new, newly remodeled. This one's interesting because it's a brand new standing seam metal roof on a fully remodeled, you might recognize it as the AAA sign place. I'm not sure if you guys saw that or not, but it's in the last 6 months. And I'm not calling anybody out, I'm just showing you. This is not standing seam, but it just goes to show texture, context, looks like metal in this street view. More standing seam in Hyde Park. This is what I think is an original stamped tin metal roof, which is one of my favorite roofs in Boise. On 21st. Metal roof. This one I bring up the context. It's metal roof, metal siding, very contemporary. And this home was permitted right before the district came into being, right? So totally fine. Then this ADU full home behind it, street facing, was through the commission maybe a year or two ago. Metal siding, metal roof, etc. Metal siding, I assume metal roof. Over in the east end, metal roof, don't think it came across your desk. Metal roof, numbered street. Another numbered street. This did come across the commission quite a while ago, but full metal roof, very contemporary home, approved through the commission. That's just a garage. I think we saw that one, I apologize. Full metal roof on the front street facade. I'll start going a little quicker because you get the idea. And then this is New England. In New England, metal roof, standing seam are all over the place. This part of the exhibit is to show you Department of the Interior, registered National Historic Places in registered National Historic Districts, metal roof, standing seam, metal roof, standing seam, metal roof, standing seam, metal roof, standing seam, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you get the point there. This is not we're not inventing the wheel here in Boise by having metal roofs kind of in our historic district. This is a very commonplace. And, some of the ages of these homes is when there wasn't homes being built as we know them in Boise. Can you imagine growing up on Happy Valley Road? I did. And there's my mom waving as I'm taking pictures of standing seam roofs. And then there's 100 covered bridges, and this is in Vermont, 1836, and most of them are covered with standing seam metal roof. And that's what I got. Questions, comments, chat, thoughts?
I guess I'll open it up. So the city has a lot of updating to do. It needs to update its preservation plan. It needs to update its design guidelines. Those design guidelines will change as new districts are added. The Park Service has recently released sustainability guidelines, which the city should adopt as well into the Preservation Commission. Not all of these are probably in protected historic districts. That's just why they can have a standing seam metal roof, but
These are all in district.
but are they local districts? That's where
Oh,
the
yeah.
local
Well, the
protection.
New England ones where I'm talking about
Yeah,
national preservation, those are in New England, but everyone before I went. to
yeah,
the-
yeah.
Those
sorry.
are in Boise's
Yeah,
historic
and some
district.
of them might have been, replaced or without our purview and done illegally, whatever. But there is room for metal roofs in the appropriate places.
Yeah.
So I don't mind them as much on new construction.
Yeah.
But when you have a historic house with a wood shingle roof, it should be replaced with a wood shingle roof. Things like that. So there's a time and the place, and it's not always the correct place and time for a metal roof. But I say the city should adopt these new things the Park Service is putting out for sustainability, because it does have a little bit more wiggle room to achieve sustainability goals.
Yeah, I think that's a good start, and I agree with what you're saying. And I think that the context is important as well. I mean, some of the examples in the historic district were new construction and more contemporary homes, so it felt appropriate. I think some of when that's looked at globally, as far as integrating that broader Boise sustainability one, I think there's wording in here that is saying not appropriate metal. So that could be massaged. So that's a little more.
The guidelines do have a lot to be, desired, because they
sure.
are poorly written, in my opinion. And they need to be done by a professional historic architect.
Yeah, it's always a heavy lift whenever you start diving in.
I guess I'm kind of new here to the board. He brings up that you have projects denied for a metal roof, or you just bring it up as like a?
Bringing it up globally, because I think that, and even there's not slides here, but in this deep dive into looking for and finding the metal roofs that are in districts, there's some that as I'm going down these streets, I'm like, oh, that's got to be a metal roof. And then it's like, oh, it's asphalt. Why did they not use a metal roof there? It works for the architecture. It's of its time, but it's got shingles on it, and it's got shingles on it because of, you know, someone, the builder, the designer, the owner was like, oh, we don't want to deal with you lovely people.
They
We
just
just
did
want
it.
an easy answer. Check.
Mm. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Yep, you bet.
Madam Chair, since it is a public work session, it would be appropriate to ask if any other members of the public wanted to speak on the topic.
Oh, great. Are there any members here that'd like to speak on the topic or have comments or thoughts about metal roofs? Great. Yes. Name and address, please.
Eric Hagan, 809 North 18th Street. I'm also an architect, just like Mr. Hurd. And I had no idea he was going to be here talking about this today, but I wholeheartedly concur with his presentation and his statements that metal roofs should be allowed in historic districts.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, that's me. That's just me.
Excellent.
Don't need nothing.
Anybody else? No? All right.
Okay, fair enough. We'll run through the agenda real quick, then give you a little break here before the hearing.
Thank you.
So item number 1, DRH 24-0013, Zion Ventures at 1920 North 13th Street. We will hear that item.
Mhm.
Item number 2, DRH 24-00133, 2421 West Ellis Avenue. We will hear that one as well. Item number 3, DRH 24-00171 at 912 East Bannock Street. We'll hear that one also. Item number 4, DRH 24-00173 at 1319 North 23rd. We would propose that for the consent agenda.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on DRH 24-00173? Are we okay with moving that to the consent agenda? Okay.
Okay, excellent. Number 5, DRH 24-00184, 1620 North 5th Street. We will hear that one as well. And the final item, number 6, DRH 24-00187, 854 West Fulton Street. We would also propose that one for the consent agenda.
All right. Do we have questions on DRH 24-00187?
No questions, just confirm that they are in agreement with the staff. recommendation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Okay,
Okay, with that, we'll see you here in about 10 minutes.
great. Thank you. Things. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. Any decisions made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the application agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order that we'll detail in a minute. And it'll go staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. And I'm just going to tell you really quick how much time each of those representatives have, in case you're not familiar with this. So staff will present their findings. They usually take 5 to 10 minutes. The applicant presents and they usually take 15 to 20 minutes. We'll cut you off. The neighborhood association has 20 minutes and then the general public each has 3 minutes. So if you pass that 3 minute, I'll say, okay, wrap it up and we're done. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call roll?
Maroney,
Here.
Montoto,
Here.
Malloy,
Here.
Otter, Parks,
Here.
Owens, Sales,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
6 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and if we can accept the meetings from the work session and the commission meeting on May 20th in 2024.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the Historic Preservation Commission work session and meeting minutes from May 20th, 2024.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Clerk, please call the roll on that.
Maroney.
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks.
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And we have 2 items that we're going to propose to be on the consent agenda tonight. The first one is DRH 24-00184. Is the applicant here? Online? Present?
Madam Chair, that's 173.
173? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, DRH 24-00173. Is that applicant here? Or online? The address is 1319 North 23rd Street, a certificate of appropriateness to alter the character defining facade of a contributing structure on a property in an R-1C residential transition zone. All right, so if the applicant is not here, we'll put it on the consent. Okay, so we'll move that to the consent agenda. We'll defer it. Yes. Oh, yes. Is there anybody present that wishes to testify in opposition of this project? Nina, all right, excellent. So we will hear this, so we won't put that one on the consent agenda. And then the next one is DRH 24-00187. Is that applicant here? Yes, excellent. Okay. So let me find where I am on my script. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Excellent. Is there anyone present wishing to testify in opposition of this project today? Anybody online? No? All right, hearing none, we will move that to the consent agenda. Excellent. And then I need a motion to approve the consent agenda with DRH 24-00187.
Madam Chair, move to approve DRH 24-00187 on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Clerk, if you could please call that.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks.
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to new business. The first item that we're going to hear tonight is DRH 24-00013. This is at 1920 North 13th Street, a certificate of appropriateness to construct a new mixed-use building with 4 residential units and a neighborhood cafe and retail on a property in a residential transitional zone with the historic design overlay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I need to recuse myself from this item.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Parks. And staff, we are ready for the report.
This is the aerial map indicating where the property is located in the north end, immediately south of Camel's Back Park on the southeast corner of 13th and Heron. Here's the demolition site plan showing the residence and garage to be demolished. This is the proposed site plan. Here's the first floor plan where there will be retail space and a neighborhood cafe. On the second floor, there are to be 4 studios. Here are the elevation drawings and perspective renderings, giving a sense of the color and textures of the materials. And these are the materials being proposed. Note the use of EIFS and cementitious panels, which will be referenced later. Here are elevation studies showing other existing commercial buildings found within the north end. Here's the photograph key plan. And these are the photographs of the existing residence and the house across the street. These photos are looking north on 13th, south on 13th, and south on Heron at the side of the residence. This is the view towards the north on Heron, looking at the Campbell's Back Park, and the views to the north and the south along the alley. This is the rear of the residence, north elevation of the residence to the south, and the south elevation of the existing residence. Finally, these are photographs of the existing garage to be removed. While there are commercial buildings within the historic district, the proposed building's height and width creates excessive massing compared to typical residences in the area. Examples of 1-story and a few 2-story commercial buildings exist nearby, but the proposed building site and form do not align with the predominantly smaller residential scale of the district. The proposed lot coverage is 43%, which is well above the guidelines limit of 35%. Most nearby properties have lower lot coverages, with only one other property in the block exceeding the proposed coverage. Additionally, the open space proposed is only 10%, far below the guidelines minimum of 40%. This discrepancy does not align with the guidelines that recommend maintaining proportion and open space similar to neighboring properties. The use of brick for the proposed building matches the materials traditionally found in the historic district. However, the proposed use of IFAS, which is exterior insulating and finishing system, basically a foam backer that's covered to imitate the look of stucco. This is not congruous with historical materials typically found in the area in the district. Cementitious panels and architectural concrete, while not explicitly prohibited, are also not historically appropriate materials, as once again, they're not found historically in the districts. In summary, the proposed building deviates significantly from the guidelines in terms of height, width, massing, lot coverage, open space, and materials. These deviations raise concerns about its compatibility within the historic district and adjacent properties. Based on the above analysis, staff recommends denial, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions for staff?
Yes, I have questions. Did the applicant work with you at all on trying to change any of the aspects of designs to make it more congruous?
This application came in a while back, and there were right after our new process, that's why it's in the new zoning code. And there were the usual early meetings of early assistance meetings and concept review. And during those meetings, I was present for the concept review meeting. And I brought up some things about how to control the massing and reduce it and make it look more residential and less commercial, especially trying to find some way to make the second floor kind of be rusticated, so to speak, from the first floor, so that it has a very different appearance, a horizontal cut, and then maybe using different roof forms, or just, we discussed different ways that it could be modified more. And the drawings that were presented at concept review are pretty much unchanged from what we see today. The applicants may speak to that a little bit further, but we did try to get them to consider some modifications to make it look more compatible to the residential properties in the vicinity. But this is the design that we got and is being presented.
Thank you. Other questions? Any commissioners online have questions? None? All right. So hearing none, we will go ahead and move on to the applicant. You can approach and please state your name and address.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Rob with our team is getting the PowerPoint loaded up, so I might wait for that for just one moment, if that's all right.
Absolutely. And when you get going, we do need your name and address.
All righty. Madam Chair and Commissioners, Emily Mueller, 506 South Fifth Street in Boise. I'm part of the applicant team, and also with me tonight are Riley Berner and John Bottles, who are the owners and operators of this building and project. Both of them were at the neighborhood meetings that we hosted and have been integrally involved with this process and moving forward. Also with me is Rob Busen from Hummel Architecture, and he will take over the second part of this presentation. So first, we want to say thank you to staff for their comments and their engagement and discussion over the last year as we've worked to design a building that's both congruent and complementary to the historic district, while also embracing the mixed-use nature of this project as envisioned by the recently adopted modern zoning code. So the modern zoning code is worth highlighting here for a moment, as it's both the inception point and the inspiration for this project. This project, like the modern zoning code, creates sustainable housing in desirable areas and neighborhoods of Boise. And the project's neighborhood cafe and neighborhood residential and retail realize the code's vision for having these uses in a neighborhood where people can walk to. That's also across from Camel's Back Park. So with that background, and really just for the benefit of everyone here tonight, we also thought it would be helpful to go over what has already been approved per code as we obtained the certificate of zoning compliance. So already approved are the uses, the residential, the neighborhood cafe, and the retail. The building dimensions and setbacks have also all been approved by code. And then all parking, the number of parking spaces have already been approved by code. And then finally, ACHD has reviewed and approved the application with their standard site conditions and conditions. And then there are also site-specific conditions, all of which applicant is agreeing to meet. So I know that you were provided the ACHD staff report and just wanted to note that applicant is agreeing to meet all of those. And so that has already been approved by ACHD. So with acknowledging all of those things, we just, again, wanted to say that we look forward to tonight's purpose, discussing the design of the building. And with that, we also wanted to highlight this finding from staff in our certificate of zoning compliance approval, which states specifically that as a mixed-use product, the building will not attempt to replicate the appearance of a single-family dwelling. And we wanted to highlight that note just as, again, as we embrace the modern zoning code, as we embrace this mixed-use project and how that's reflected in the building's design tonight. So with that, I will turn it over to Rob Busen.
If you can state your name and address, please.
Yes, Rob Busan, 3608 West Burke Avenue, Boise, Idaho. So thanks, Emily. Thanks, everyone, for letting us speak today to this project. So there's been a lot of thought and effort and design iteration put into this, multiple meetings with the city, also 2 neighborhood sessions on the site or near the site to make sure that everyone's voice was heard on this. With that, right now, we're choosing to focus on sort of the 4 main points brought up in the findings and analysis. A lot more has been thought about here. So if you have other questions, please let's discuss. So looking at the height to width ratio of this project, here we've got an elevation kind of along Heron Street and one down below along 13th Street. So looking at the similarity in building heights with its adjacent neighbors and those on the block. So looking at Heron in particular here, we see other buildings down or behind it to the west of the project that replicate the scale of the building, both the vertical scale and the width. Along 13th Street, if we look across the facade, we're matching the width of a number of those buildings along, and then back towards the west in the distance, we see the height relative to this block. Additionally, we've worked to break down the building mass into a series of smaller smaller elements. Is what you're seeing here in the illustration, and then we'll have more diagrams that capture that. So here we've got the buildable area as a simple mass, starting with the setbacks and what was kind of allowed per the zoning code. With respect to the adjacent neighbor, that first box we've cut out, reducing that to a single story element adjacent to the single story neighbor. Looking at the third diagram, that element that stretches across the top represents the vertical along the alleyway, vertical circulation, and the horizontal circulation that leads to those 4 residential units. In that corridor, we've got only high windows, so the view shed to the neighboring properties is protected. There's no there's kind of to respect to privacy there. Additionally, at the single story element along 13th Street, we've pushed that facade back and then created breaks in the facade, both along 13th and along Heron, that are pushed back as well, and clad on a contrasting element to that brick to help break down the overall massing. Both of those also step down in height to help make each of those masses feel independent. You know, we don't actually see buildings in elevation or aerials very seldom. So here's a ground level perspective along 13th Street looking towards Camel's Back Park, just off in the distance there. So here what we're seeing is the single story retail suite on the right, pushed back, also dropping down, but just a hint of that, but pushed back from the sidewalk further than the major mass on the corner. Also highlighting the horizontal canopy elements that work with pedestrian scale. And then just how that may look without the overlay on it and some lines. Also looking at the corner of 13th and Heron, showing on the right how the building steps down to single story to associate with those neighbors. And then the horizontal canopies extend across the facade. Over along Heron Street, we've got that contrasting break that signifies the entryway to the cafe space. Also above, we see delineation between the open storefront down below. Above, we've got more enclosed, and we'll talk more about that here in a few slides. So just another image of how that might look. Also, the activity concentrated largely along Heron Street to associate with the activity that's happening across the street in the park, one of the most vibrant parks in the city, I think, hands down. Looking at mass and form of the building, it's generally appropriate to design a new building and reinforce pedestrian character from the front elevation, maintain similarity of building, roof form, and front porches traditionally found on the block when appropriate. So since this is deemed a commercial building, we think it's quite appropriate to look at other commercial structures or historically commercial structures within the district. So here we've got the first image along Pueblo Street. I think it's a historic grocery store, in fact, converted to a residence. You can see here, first floor, a lot more open, second floor, more enclosed, signifying that transition to residential, or what I'm presuming to be the case there. Adjacent to that here, we've got Reeb's Shoe Shop, which is just south of the Hyde Park Historic District, but lies within the North End Neighborhood Historic District. So while we were designing this building, we took a lot of cues from neighboring buildings, both in size, scale, and how they treated the first and the second floor. Diving a little bit further, we've got some more examples. This top left one, I believe, is a yoga studio. On the right, yoga studio that was a grocery store back in the day. On the right, we've got multifamily project over on 8th. On the bottom, another one that was highlighted in the report, the Roots building, which does have a lot of relevance. If you look at the single story structure and the brick detailing we've carried through this building design, there's a lot of association there. But all these buildings being commercial in scale or commercial in nature, and then also similar scale to what we're proposing. Although it is in a different historic district, I think it's worth mentioning, discussing Hyde Park Historic District, because it is integral to the fabric of the North End neighborhood. It's kind of in the same sentence in my mind. So with that, we looked at length at some other projects within the Hyde Park District. Here is one on the corner of Eastman and 13th. This one really celebrates the kind of openness at the ground level. They've got the canopies here, some great vertical pilasters that accentuate the overall building. Also similar in mass and scale to our project, which is just a couple blocks to the north of this. And another one, actually, this was an inspiration for the corner glazed window of ours, but we've continued that design and with more openness at the lower level for pedestrian interaction with those active uses on the first floor. Other attributes here, that kind of belly band that separates the two, again, presuming the use was residential above and commercial down below historically, kind of echoing that in our design, as well as some other detailing throughout. And as we look at orientation and lot coverage, so what I've done here is highlighted, taken an aerial of the block overall, highlighted those parcels that have more than 35% lot coverage. As you can see along 13th Street, the majority of the parcels have a higher lot coverage than the recommended 35. Within the block overall, it's a 50-50 split, assuming that this project were to move forward. I think additionally, the unique character and opportunity that this parcel presents, being a corner lot as defined in the modern zoning code, has more opportunity. Everyone sees more opportunity there. That's why you get the cafe and other opportunities there. Also the proximity to one of the more vibrant parks in town, also proximity to Hyde Park. And also with this lot coverage, more increased lot coverage here, we're getting 4 residential units as well as a walkable neighborhood amenity. Looking at closer at the landscape plan here, and starting to calculate the openness of the overall site. We also included the permeable paving surfaces, which are kind of the top left in front of, or at the very corner of 13th and Heron. That's a permeable surface there in the plaza area. And then also in the parking spaces along the alleyway, also permeable pavement or pavers in that location. So with those considered, which is outlined in the open space definition here, the open space for the property is actually 25.2% versus the lower number that was mentioned in the report. Also, while we're looking at the plan here, I wanted to note that as part of earlier city entitlements processes, we've doubled the bike parking with a total of 18 temporary and 8 covered bike parking stalls for this project. And diving into building materials, there's quite a bit of information here. So I guess right off the bat, so the EFIS, we realize that's not an appropriate material for a project like this in this district. So we're looking to transition the EFIS to stucco in all the areas that's highlighted, and I can highlight those if you'd like. Another thing we'd like to talk about here is how we've broken the building up. Sorry, the screen went away. The lower level having more glazing, more openness, and down at the upper levels having more enclosed, more intimate scale there at the residential level. So on this overall, we've got the brick framework that's consistent throughout the project or throughout the facades, and then infilled with glazing down below, and then above, that's where you see the fiber cement siding. Since the submittal, we've polished the project and decided on a fiber cement siding product, which we actually have here if you guys would like to take a look. The fiber cement siding in general is allowed by code or the zoning guidelines. I think the product we've selected is superior to many of those that end up on buildings, like a hardy plank or something like that. It has a lot more durability as well as integrated coloring to it versus kind of the paint. And another point on this too, as it steps down where we had the EFIS and now have the stucco, as the locations that are set back, the initial idea was there's an opportunity for some cost savings there where it was out of view from almost anyone that's not standing on a neighboring roof or the second floor. Another thing that came out of conversations with city staff was the addition or the extrusion of these second floor balconies to help define that residential level overall. So that's why these are projected a little bit more than they were before. And here, as the building's set back on the south elevation, that's where the EFIS was and where the stucco will be. Also along the east front in the alley, transitioning from that brick to the fiber cement siding, kind of stepping down in scale and making that feel like another mass. Looking around the neighborhood, I just wanted to highlight several examples of concrete base as a design element or a necessary element in a lot of historical projects. In our project, we've chosen to have a concrete base underneath the storefront largely, and then in other areas for increased durability and support the building. So here around the neighborhood, several examples of concrete as a base. Some more accentuated than others, some including steps, some including not. I do believe, to be fair, the Roots project is probably plaster over something else, but I think it's in the same vein. And then here, an image of how we're using concrete as a base in our project. Thank you for your time. Overall, I think we've got a thoughtfully designed building that respects this historical context and exemplifies the modern zoning code. We've worked to make this building feel similar in scale to the neighboring buildings on the same block and lot coverage. Material palette echoes the surroundings without a false sense of history. Creation of additional housing units and housing diversity in one of the most desirable districts in the city. Leveraging unique adjacency to Camelsback Park and Hyde Park as a vibrant high activity zone, and the creation of a walkable amenity in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for the applicant?
I have a question for the applicant. I guess for me, like, I appreciate the thought that you put into this project, and we do need housing, and I do like mixed use. It's one of my biggest gripes about some of the stuff that's been built lately is it's not mixed use. But for me, I think the second floor design and the use of, that's going to be stucco now instead of the ephes, correct?
Yes, where it's set back.
Where it's
So
set back. Okay.
where we're seeing here, that's all the fiber cement panel.
Okay. So for me, the places where you have fenestration and then you have the paneling, it reminds me of in the 1960s when they took out a lot of historic windows and they just put in little aluminum sliders, and then you just had board up around the areas of the windows that were a larger fenestration opening. And I guess that's kind of the one hang up for me on this project and its design of fitting in with the historic neighborhood is that the ephes around the fenestration openings, and maybe working with Richard, that could have been improved a little bit more to fit in better. I don't know if you had any other ideas when you were developing this project for that second story.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so there's no ephes in this view we're looking at right now, or stucco for that matter. This is where the fiber cement siding is going, just to make sure. And yeah, we went through a couple iterations. I believe initially there was a little bit more openness at the upper level, but we, in an effort to replicate some of the other structures that were highlighted here around the district, reducing the amount of glazing up there, and then infilling with that same contrasting material that we had elsewhere in the project.
Would you be willing to increase the fenestration openings?
Maybe could you speak to it a little bit more to help with people?
But it sounds like originally the openings were larger, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, the window system. Yeah.
So we shot them down to intentionally.
Madam Chair, can we make sure he gets those on the microphone?
Yeah, if you could step up and state your name and address, please, and we'll have this all on record.
Riley Werner, 1920 13th Street. We initially had larger window systems that kind of matched the commercial on the bottom. We'd gotten feedback from planning that they'd like us to differentiate the commercial from the residential. And so as you saw, as Rob had in some of those precedent photos, you saw the residential glassing and window systems always got smaller to kind of show that difference between a storefront and then a residential unit above it. So we took that approach and then shrunk our window systems to kind of try to create a modern take on those type of buildings. So, but yeah, we would be open. I think our first rendition had a window system that was much larger in scale, and yeah, so we'd be open to doing that for certain.
I think the other option would be like the cladding around the fenestration as well. Could
I show you
change-
the example of what that is? Would you like to
Oh,
see
sure.
it? Might be able- There is a little scratch in here. We did a little durability test. We were taking a screwdriver to it just to see how durable it was. So, and maybe I give you the hardy board too. Yeah.
So let the record show that the applicant is showing the commission
So this is,
examples
some
of the
additional paneling that you
materials.
See in historic quite often, it's hardy board, and more do it like paneling. This is a much higher quality of the same type of material.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer while I'm up here?
No, that's it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Other questions from our commissioners? I have a question. So I know that you did some community engagement, you had neighborhood meetings. What were you hearing, and like how have you responded to that?
A few things. I think foot traffic was a big one, and bike traffic and what we were going to do for that. And so we immediately doubled our required bike parking. Like Rob said, we have 18 bike parking stalls around the site in 3 different locations: on the north along Heron, on the south east side of the site, and then also along 13th Street there in front of the retail space. So we upped the parking. We also heard that having permeable pavers was important to the neighborhood district. And so we, I think our first rendition, to be honest, had none. And so we took a hard look at that, and pavers aren't cheap, but we decided to make that whole main plaza on the corner of 13th and Heron pavers, along with our whole parking in the rear, which we thought was a huge step up for the building. I mean, usually you're going to see asphalt in that location, not the most aesthetically pleasing material to see. And so that whole parking, all 4 stalls will be pavers. Also, the step down in the building, like Rob talked about, we faced all of the residential units so that they look directly north over the park. No residential units looked over our adjacent neighbors. They all look to the north. And so we strategically located those units, the balconies, the way that they view north away from the homes towards the park. The step down to our neighbor to the immediate south, we went from 2 stories and scaled it down really quickly to 1, and then recessed the building to really minimize the impact on our neighbor. Shielded lighting, a big one. Nobody wants lights coming into their home at night and light exposure. So we've all shielded lighting that will prevent any light exposure to our neighboring properties. Detached sidewalks, a big one. The sidewalk system on Heron has a deficit right now. And so with our site, we'll be improving our frontage along Heron Street and doing a 5-foot wide detached sidewalk with an 8-foot landscape buffer between Heron and the sidewalk, something that you don't see and you don't get because this is a redevelopment. So, this wasn't a standard 50, 100 years ago when people were developing their sites. And then in addition, we heard several neighbors wanting the alleyway to be paved. And ACHD actually recommended that, and we agreed to it, that we are going to asphalt our adjacent alleyway all the way to our south boundary, all the way to north to Heron, and then we have to rebuild that entrance onto the alley to meet modern ACHD standards. So it's going to really improve, dust, whatnot. I mean, dirt alleys, everybody would rather have an asphalt alley. So I think our site work is been really upgraded. Our patio space too, we intentionally put the patio all along Heron Street. We buffered it. If you go to our landscape plan, well, that kind of gives a depiction of it. You can see, so this patio is all along Heron Street, and we face the whole coffee shop. If you see this, the main entrance for the coffee is off Heron, and the whole orientation of the coffee shop, it looks north. And so really, again, getting the impact going away from the homes that are adjacent to our site. And then, sorry, I don't know which one is the landscape plan. Oh, so you can see there, so the patio on the north along Heron, and then, obviously customers will be sitting out there. We were restricted to being 30% of our gross square footage of our building, or it's 2,000 square feet. So we have a 300 square foot patio. And then we strategically designed our waste receptacle bins and a landscape kind of buffer in between the patio and the alley. So there is some level of mitigation to our neighbors across the alleyway. And so I think, I mean, through and through, I think we feel like we got a lot of feedback, great feedback. And, you know, we did 3 or 4 renditions. We had 2 neighborhood meetings. We're only required to have 1, and we had 2 because we wanted their feedback. And I feel like we took a lot of their comments and implemented them in our final design here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do other commissioners have questions? Anybody online? Any commissioners online? No? All right.
Awesome.
Hearing
Thank you,
none, we'll
commissioners.
go ahead and we will move on to the neighborhood association. Name and address, please, and then you have 20 minutes.
Eric Hagan, 809 North 18th Street. This is kind of the first project that's come in under the new zoning code, pushing the limits on the commercial corner lot that was added into there. As such, we're going to get a lot of comments for and against the project, as we have seen throughout the neighborhood. Most of the concerns have been focused around parking and loss of trees. But the applicant they came to us before they did any applications, and we shared with them our thoughts and concerns about the massing and the materials and the parking and all that stuff. And then they had their 2 meetings. One of them was in our regularly scheduled meeting place that we have monthly. And there was plenty of input from the neighborhood at that time. And from our point of view, it seems that the applicant has tried to address those concerns as much as they can. The use is allowed in the zone per the current zone. And so we can't really do anything about that. The existing house missed being a contributing house by just about a month because of an old, outdated historic survey. Once again, you know, we'd just like to ask the city if they could get an updated historic survey so we can have accurate data on these things. You know, obviously there's going to be parking issues in the north end. There's always parking issues around Camel's Back, around Hyde Park. And the applicant is providing the parking that's required in there, and there's really not much we can do about that either. It'll be interesting to see how it actually works out in the end with the new tenants and the historic neighbors around there. Nina is grateful to see a mixed-use project adding housing into the neighborhood that's desperately needed. We like the design, and we hope this project will enhance the neighborhood and the nearby Camel's Back Park. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions for the neighborhood association? All right. Thank you very much. I'm now going to go to the sign-up sheet. And let's see. Emily, I believe you already spoke. Okay, great. Thomas Clark is first. And if you can step forward and state your name and address, please.
Thomas Clark, 715 North 7th Street, Boise. I really appreciated the slides that they put together for us showing what it would look like. That's kind of hard to picture in my head. I had heard about the project, but I hadn't seen what it looked like. I think they did a really good job of taking kind of a modern look at something historical and being able to combine that together. I think they did a really good job of that. I know parking is a huge issue, as always, like they had mentioned, but I think they did a really good job to mitigate that with cycles, as well as I think a lot of the individuals that are going to be visiting this coffee shop are already going to be parked there to be at the park. I've noticed quite often when I'm down there, there's either kids soccer games going on or cycle groups. And I've always said that those parents probably want to drink, but they don't want to walk all the way down to Hyde Park and lose sight of their children in the park. So I think this gives them a really good opportunity, especially with the way that it faces, to be able to get a drink or whatever and still be able to view their kids. So I think they did a really good job overall. Yeah, just serving the community with that. And I agree with it. So
Excellent.
thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, I have Sophia Fergost. Sorry. And your name and address, please.
Sophia Fergoso, 3615 North Bonnie Lane in Boise. I'm really excited for this coffee shop. I hope to see it just come to pass. I'm born and raised here, so I care about protecting just how the North End is and Hyde Park especially. But I think that they've done a really good job at being considerate about the neighborhood and just what people are asking about, the parking situation and how they want the building to look. And I'm just in favor of it, and I hope to see it come to pass.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next on the sheet, I have John Bottles.
John Bottles, 145 Dover Lane, Boise. I'm with the developer applicant team, and one of the, maybe this is more of an emotional pitch, but we had so many Facebook comments that were like, these have to be Californian developers that just want to make money on the beautiful North End. And Riley and I plan to own this project for a long, long time. We look at lots of projects. We do lots of different development projects, and I would say cost is always a factor. I don't think there was a single material that Hummel recommended that was a higher cost that we said no to, simply because I'll be here every weekend. A lot of my friends live in the North End. I lived in the house on this site. I have another house just down the street that some of my best friends rent from me. So love the North End. We're here to stay, and we've really done our best to design a project that we want to walk by and be extremely proud of. So, yep, obviously in support. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we have Shelby Dreves.
Hi,
Your name and address, please.
sorry, Shelby Dreves,
Thank you.
125 Bacon Drive, Boise. I'm in support of this project. I spend a lot of time in the North End. I currently live in the East End, but am a past resident of the North End. I used to live on 15th, so I'm well aware of the culture and what that neighborhood brings. And one of my favorite things about living there was the walkability to Hyde Park and Java, the other coffee shops there. And one thing that excites me is that I spend a lot of my time like exercising in the park, going on trail runs. And a lot of times it's like, okay, now I'm going to drive down to Hyde Park because I don't want to walk that extra bit. So just having it right there, that coffee shop would be an amazing, just another option to have in the North End. And also as like a single woman, just having another option of like a studio apartment for like a single person. That sounds like it's really hard to find those spaces in the North End. And so I think that'd be a great opportunity for some people.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have Grace Peterson.
Hi, Grace Peterson, 3232 Mountain View Drive, Boise. I am a fifth generation Idahoan, and my family has owned and operated several small businesses. In town, in Idaho, one has been operating for 82 years consecutively. So there's a lot of history of like small businesses, food service industry in my family. And I am in support of this project, and I love seeing the renderings of it. And I just really appreciate what they're doing to try to bring community together. Something that I've noticed about spaces that a lot of local businesses create is it's places where community can gather. And I think that this project allows a lot of open space for that to happen. And I think that's something that's needed on that end. Things in Hyde Park tend to fill up quickly as Boise's growing, which I think is great. And so I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for another space to be created for community to gather. And just a place for people to hang out and just gather together. And I love the location right across from the park. I think it's very much needed, conveniently located there. So I love that. So I'm in favor of the project.
Thank
Thank you.
Next, we have Rachel Hengst. Name and address, please.
Hi, Rachel Hengst, 1814 North 16th Street, Boise. I am somebody that has been raised in Idaho, and I deeply love the North End community. And I work from home, and I like to spend a lot of my time taking my home office outside of my home into places within walking distance of my home. And this space is just a couple of blocks from me. And so I think having a space that's nearby Hyde Park, but has a little more space from there
because these spots tend to fill up and they're pretty busy these days. And I think the building is beautiful, and I think it really fits well with the design of the historical North End. And I am definitely in support of this project, and I think it can add a lot to our vibrant community in the North End. So
Thank you. Next, I have Emily Barber? Emily Barber?
Yeah.
Excellent. Name and address, please.
Emily Barber, 1911 North 13th Street. So directly across from the proposed building, and super for it. One of the reasons my husband and I wanted to live in the North End was its walkability. And I think adding another locally owned business to that option would be awesome. I, like Rachel, also work from home, and I'm always looking for places to go and get out of the house, and having that across the street is something I look forward to. I know one of the big concerns was parking, but we both street park, and even when there's big events that bring a lot of people to the North End, rarely have an issue finding parking. So I'm not super concerned about that personally. Yeah, as a whole, I think it's going to be a great contributor to the North End.
Thank you. And next we have Philip Barber.
Evening, Philip Barber, 1911 North 13th Street. I'm actually a business owner, small business carpenter, working in the North End on historical stuff, and have seen all the different kind of ins and outs of this process. And I think this is actually the first time I've seen the updated drawings, and I really like it. I think anything that enhances community, and also coming from England, we have a big background of being able to walk to your local grocery and promote community in that way. I'm all for it. If you're doing something for your area that's going to bring people together, instead of divide people and you have to get in your car and go away from it, I think that's a big thing. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Next we have, I think it's Brent Lawson. Name and address, please.
Yeah, good evening. Brent Lawson, 145 Dover Lane, Boise, Idaho. I actually lived in 1911 13th Street before they took over. So I was there for 4 years, directly across. The neighbor is Dottie, really sweet lady. Got to know her well. I can confirm just quickly on the parking, it was really not that bad. I parked in front. There is spots behind the house, but we had 2 guys living in the house, and there was very rarely an issue. So anecdotally, I can very much confirm what these gentlemen have done. I think supports the area, and I wouldn't say that living in that region for 4 years was not a huge issue for me personally. And I drove a big truck, so it was, besides the windshields, you got to pull those things in, the mirrors. And my comments though are, I recognize the position you guys are in, and that this is like a pioneering effort, right? And that you have a zoning code that changed, and then you have an early adopter that's trying to push something forward. And so I recognize the tension of trying to execute on the modern zoning plan while also, preserving the historical district. And so I think it's a tension. I think these guys have been very thoughtful in the design, the material, and the way that they've crafted the physical building. So I'm in strong support of it. Personally, similar to a lot of the testimonies that have been shared tonight, I love going to the North End. I love walking around, and having something that's right off the park, to me, it's hitting it right on the head. You're solving affordable housing in an area that is a high desirable place to live, with walkability and access to the park. So to me, it's an absolute home run of a project, and I think is right in line with what the zoning code was trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ella Werner. Maybe Ella, it looks like Werner. Thank you. Mason Werner also had to leave. All right. So that's it for my list. If there are people who are still wishing to testify on this project, can you raise your hand, and maybe we'll just go from this side of the room to that side of the room? Excellent. So name and address, please.
Eric Holstein, 1909 North 12th Street. I share the alley to this. I'm in favor of this project. As you saw, the height of this project is based off my garage, which is actually why I bought this house. Because of the height of the garage. I was rejected to put a second story on a house on 14th because of the, the height restrictions is kind of what they're talking about. And this isn't a cozy little corner. This is everybody from the Highlands first chance to take a sip of coffee because it got cool enough as they take a left on Heron. There's a reason this house isn't a monster right now. It's really not that desirable place for residential occupancy. And I think this is a perfect fit for what it is. I just had one question for the commission, if that's okay. I noticed in the comments, part of the rejection was because of parking. Is that actually part of the commission's purview?
So that question should be directed to staff, and if we can,
I just had never heard that before, so I've
yeah,
been to
so
several of
I
these.
think I'm going to defer to staff to interpret that. And if we can pause his time for just a second.
Oh, you do? Okay. I didn't see it in the, okay.
Those spaces are what's proposed in the lab.
Right, yeah.
Mike? You're right. Now we're green. Let me say that all over again. Yes, parking is assessed through some of the other entitlements that this property went through, and it also does meet the code, which is, we also look at that in historic as well as things
Right.
meeting the guidelines. So the parking is the appropriate number of spaces and everything. Looks good.
Thank you.
Great,
Appreciate that.
thank you.
So,
We can start the clock again.
So my only other comment would be as far as use of modern materials. My neighbor, our houses look, we're right there. Our houses look exactly the same. Mine is hand fur from Eugene, Oregon that I have to paint every 3 years. His is a modern material that he has to paint every 15 or 20. So let's not go back to single pane windows. Use of modern materials is not a bad thing. So anyway, in support of it, Eric Holstein, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room wanting to testify on this project? Excellent. Amy, you can state your name and address, please.
Amy Allgaier, 1402 North 22nd Street. I have more of a question. I know that lot coverage is an issue for this project. We haven't had this come up before because we don't normally have commercial construction in the residential zone. So I'm wondering if there's what is that going to look like going forward when we have a commercial project that normally wouldn't have a lot coverage restriction in a residential zone? Does that give us any flexibility at all, or are we trying to preserve that residential texture
Right
with
now,
that?
the way the code is written, the lot coverage is the lot coverage, right? We don't have differences between commercial and non-commercial in the north end, but as Commissioner Malloy is saying, oftentimes we need to rewrite things. There's some things that are not working in practice that we need to figure out.
And this may fall under that umbrella going forward, that there's some tweak that could happen for a commercial project on a corner that would give them a little bit more space to work with, because 35% is not much when you have to also provide parking.
We take things on a case-by-case basis.
I knew that, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Excellent. Name and address, please.
My name is Jesse Oliver, recent North Ender, as of about 2 days ago, signed a lease at 1520 6th and Sherman. And so it's transplant from Keene, Idaho. So I'm actually born and raised in Idaho, lived here my whole life. Obviously, I grew up going to Camel's Back when there was the old playground there with the metal hot slides that you could get burnt. So I'm very familiar with the area, very familiar with the territory. Obviously, as we hear change and new additions and new buildings and whatnot, I think as many of us have communicated, we're just looking for a little bit of those historical pieces to remain. And from my understanding and what I've witnessed tonight is it really sounds like they really took the time that goes into building this building to put in some of those pieces, the history, the things that we remember as the North End. And so I'm all in favor for it. I think it looks great. We love walking in the North End, and as long as they can provide dog treats for our puppy, we'll be even more excited. So thanks, guys.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else present? Anybody online wanting to comment?
Madam Chair, yes, we have Bruce Mastorovich up first.
Excellent. Bruce Mastorovich, if you can state your name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Bruce Mastorovich. I live at 450 West Grove Street. I think with all the construction downtown, I lately would argue I also live in a historic district. I have a dirt road outside. I'm sure there'll be some wagon ruts when the pioneers get here. I think this mixed-use project's a good project. I've looked on Google Maps. I've been over there, kind of rode my bike over there. It looks better than the building it's replacing. I'd love to see it built. I take a little issue with staff calling 43% lot coverage is well above 45%. I mean, it's between a third and a half, depending on, for both of those. I'm an engineer. I'm good at eyeballing dimensions, but I struggle with noticing the difference. And especially given like the applicant's comments on existing non-conforming structures that are already over that in the area. Take a little issue with that. Also, I don't know, just anytime there's a complaint about like the height of a two-story building, I have a problem with that. People have been building two-story buildings for like over 5,000 years. This neighborhood has plenty of taller buildings than the one that's being proposed. I just don't see any of these size arguments as historical arguments, and I think those should be left to design review in the city council. I don't know. I like that the brick is similar to, I think the applicant said the Roots building, the 1521 North 13th. They looked about the same kind of material to me. Having a few clean surfaces in between, I think it's kind of just something we're requiring as a city because we have all these rules about buildings can't mass too much. So like they have to break that up. So I think that kind of puts developers in a hard position. I don't know what they're supposed to do if they can't just use one material all across. There's got to be some gaps. I don't know. I feel like opposition to this is kind of focused on some non-historic grounds, and I'm not sure it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more online?
Madam Chair, next up is Patrick Spouts.
Excellent. Patrick, if you can state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Patrick Spouts, 753 West Sandstone Court, Boise, Idaho. And I am excited to speak in support of this project for most of the reasons we've heard here tonight. I especially want to second some of Bruce's comments who went right before me concerning the two-story and how common that is and how normal that is. And it's common in the North End in a historic manner. And I don't think that should be a barrier to building this project. I visit Camel's Back several times a week with my kids. I would utilize the commercial coffee shop here for the reason someone else mentioned of the adjacency to the park and the convenience. I think it looks nicer than the building it would replace. And to me, most importantly, it facilitates 4 new households, 1 or maybe a couple more people per household, to have the chance to really enjoy living next to Camel's Back Park. And to me, that's an enormous net win, given the housing situation in the city. And I would like to see this project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else online? No. All right, last call. Anybody wishing to speak? Okay, excellent. So now we have the rebuttal by the applicant. You have more time to talk about what you've heard and any issues you want to address.
Yes, so there's been a lot of feedback. I think a lot of it does capture our willingness to work with folks, thinking about people who actually be using this building and these spaces and living in this area. I myself live just outside of the North End, but frequent. I think I've ridden my bike past it 3 times in the last week myself. So looking forward to that amenity. We've shown the willingness to work with city staff as well as you guys if there's additional comments or requests, and we look forward to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So now we'll close the hearing to the public portion and we will render a decision. So do we have a motion or discussion on this project? Anybody want to get the ball rolling? Commissioners online, feel free to jump in.
Madam Commissioner, so is it clear that they're going to change the ephes to 3-part stucco? That's
given.
And I think we'll put that in our
Yeah,
motion as well.
that's what I'm getting at. If that's the case, I make a motion to approve DRH 24-00013.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, excellent. Nikki, if you could call the vote on that, please.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Excellent. All right, so moving on to our next agenda item is DRH 24-00133. This is at 2421 West Ellis Avenue, a certificate of appropriateness to alter the character defining facade of a contributing structure on a property in a residential compact zone with the historic design overlay. Staff, could we please get the report on this?
Yes. This is the aerial map indicating where the property is located in the north end between 24th and 25th Street on the south side of Ellis. This is the site plan. Here's the basement plan and the first floor plan. At the bottom of the existing elevation, at the bottom is the existing elevation, and above that is the proposed elevation showing a covered porch to the left and the dormer to the right. Here are the remaining elevation drawings, largely unchanged, except, largely unchanged. And here are photographs of the subject property. The applicant has proposed to add a covered front porch with a shed roof across the majority of the front facade where a porch did not previously exist. The facade of the structure is also proposed to be modified with a new door, new windows, and new siding. The structure is contributing to the district, and remodels/additions should not create a false historic appearance or change the historic character of the building. Since this is a change to the historic character of the building, it does not comply with the guidelines. Additionally, the proposed change of siding type and windows patterning are not appropriate and alter the character of the contributing historic structure. The existing home is a 1.5 story with a gable roof form in the front and low sloping hip roof in the rear. The applicant proposes to add a dormer to the right side of the home. This dormer will provide headspace for a new stair to the second floor. Both the porch and the dormer are proposed to utilize shed roofs, which is not consistent with the historic character of the contributing property. Based on the above analysis, staff recommends denial. I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners for staff? Commissioners online? All right, thank you. So with that, we'll now hear from the applicant. If you can step forward and state your name and address, please.
My name is Jeremy Dancer, 8370 West Creek Run Way, and I'm here for the homeowners, Skylar and Gabby. And from what I'm getting from them is the big thing is the front porch. Is this correct? Okay. Okay. This home's been remodeled poorly in the past. If you look at I don't know if you can bring up
Can we bring the pictures back up?
the elevation of the existing home. Can you, the pictures of the existing home? So everything you see from, if you're looking at the big gable to the left, that's an addition to the home. So it's not original to the home. We feel as though putting a front porch will improve the looks of this home. And they like the idea of being able to sit out front and socialize with neighbors, people walking by. And this is a big deal to them. They're okay with leaving the siding and complying with whatever windows you guys recommend, but the front porch is very important to these homeowners, and we feel that it'll improve the looks of this home without taking away from the north end. Um, that's all I've got for you. Any
All right.
questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners for the applicant? Or the commissioners online? All right, sounds like we don't have any questions right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Commissioner, I have a
Oh.
question.
Come back.
So where you're putting that shed dormer,
Uh-huh.
is that like already a little hip roof right there now? Is that what you're saying?
To
On
the,
if you're looking at the front view to the, what would be our right?
oh, to the right where we're doing the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bump out for some stairs going down to the basement now, yes.
Is that what that is now? There's already
Yeah.
stairs, but they're not conforming.
They're going to the basement. We're trying to get access to the upstairs.
Okay.
Right now, they have a spiral staircase in the center of the
Yeah, I
house.
saw
It
that.
is far from legal.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And one other note, what's kind of interesting, Eric here sent me a nice email, and North End Neighborhood Association really liked that idea, so there's that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And he set you up perfectly, Eric, if you want to approach and state your name and address.
Good evening, Eric Hagan, 809 North 18th Street. It's interesting that this project is being recommended for denial, and there's a subsequent project that's coming up tonight that has a front porch addition that's being recommended for approval. That is probably the biggest concern we would have with this project. The existing house and its historic character was just a front stoop, and the front porch was not a part of that historic character. Now, the addition that was done kind of messed that up clearly, and created a gable with a pitched roof coming to confluence at along the same face, which is a very odd thing architecturally and historically. And since there's already a hip roof over the stair to the basement, it seems that what the applicant is proposing seems to be in congruence with the existing structure. And we don't really see an issue with the shed roof or the shed roof over the new porch, as being able to sit on your front porch in the north end is what the north end is all about. So we're in favor of the project.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions from the commission? No? All right. There's nobody on the sign-up sheet. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to testify in favor or opposition of this project? Is there anybody online? No. Okay. So now the applicant has time to rebut. Okay. Excellent. We'll close the hearing and we will render a decision. So if anybody has a motion or discussion, we can get that going.
I have a question for staff. Okay. Richard, do you know when the addition was put on?
I just pulled up the IC form. And it showed the photographs on that form were identical to the house, the way the house looks now, and the house was considered contributing structure, but I don't know. Mike? I don't know. Yes, the inventory form shows states that the structure is contributing as a minimal traditional style house, and the photographs in that inventory form present the same elevation as what we see now. So one would conclude that meant that they per inventory, the entire structure is a contributing minimal traditional structure. I can't speak to when those additions were done. It could possibly be researched to determine, but at the end of the day, the structure as shown today and the structure as referred to in the form are contributing. So
Okay, thank you.
I don't know for sure when that happened.
Thanks. Any other questions or thoughts or emotion?
So adding a front porch is goes against the standards you're creating a false sense of history by putting a front porch on the house. So I do agree with staff on the front porch. I think there could be a creative way of putting like a landscape area out front with pavers that they could still sit outside.
Like a
and
front patio.
like a front patio, sit outside their house and talk with neighbors and, watch people walk their dogs, whatever they want to do out there, without adding the front porch and changing the character defining facade.
Madam Chair, my thoughts are similar in that it's the covering on the front porch. I think that's the sticking point. The porch itself, if it were uncovered, is in theory fairly easily reversible. Whereas the covering extending off the house, A, creates the false history, and B, is less easily reversed. So, I mean, those are kind of my thoughts that are rolling around in my head.
So you're like front deck person.
I don't like that term, but yes, in
Okay.
essence, yes.
Excellent. Other thoughts or emotion?
Would you maybe be in favor of making a motion to approve the project without the front porch and what other? Richard, what were your other issues? Was it the siding?
Yes, the applicant, I remember to turn it on. The applicant is proposing replacing the siding and I think replacing the windows and quite a few other elements on the facade. So the facade's going to be overall dramatically altered by replacing existing materials. And there's more than just the front porch. The front porch was the main issue, but all the other modifications also for a cumulative effect are altering the front facade.
So maybe I would be in favor of sending this back and hearing it next month with the changes, with staff recommendations and the porch removed.
I like that. Is that a motion?
All right. So I'm going to motion to defer DRH 24-00133 2421 West Ellis Avenue to work with staff on finding appropriate materials for siding and windows and removing the front porch from the project and the other recommendations that staff has.
Second.
Thank you. If we could please call the roll.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto, Aye. Malloy,
Aye.
Harps,
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next item is DRH 24-00171. This is at 912 East Bannock Street, a certificate of appropriateness to construct a detached accessory structure with an accessory dwelling unit and ADU on the property in a residential compact zone with the historic design overlay. Staff, if we can please get the report.
This is the aerial map indicating where the property is located in the east end between Elm and Maple on the north side of Bannock. Here are the existing and proposed site plans, the floor plans, and the proposed elevations. Here are the photographs of the existing residence. And here are photographs of the existing garage and a tree to be removed. And these are the adjacent properties as well as the existing pool in the backyard to remain. The applicant proposes to build a two-story ADU with a parking carport beside it. The proposed structure will have a height to the peak of 19 feet 2 inches. The existing residence on the property is a one-story structure whose height is 19 feet to the peak. The guidelines strongly encourage detached structures to not exceed the height of the primary residence, and this proposed structure is just 2 inches taller. This proposed design uses a shed roof with a clear story, which clearly differentiates it from the historic residence. The proposed structure features lap siding, which is congruous to the district and the historic residence. The elevation shows sliding windows and sliding glass door, which are inappropriate. Conditions have been added that the window be casement and the sliding glass door be a patio or atrium door. The proposed structure is below 1,000 square feet and 22 feet in height, and therefore complies with the setback requirements of this zone. Based on the above analysis, staff recommends approval, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for staff? All right, no questions at this time. So now we'll hear from the applicant. State your name and address, please.
My name's Amy Allgaier. I live at 1402 North 22nd Street, and I'm the architect for this project. Richard gave a perfectly wonderful explanation of what we're doing. The only thing I would like to really touch on is the letter of concern from the neighbor that came in late. There's some issues here that I would like to address and show how we're trying to mitigate some of these things. The first issue was me stating in my letter of explanation that we had worked with the neighbors to address their concerns about the views of the carport from their property. And they're saying that we didn't really do that. In early April, my client met with the neighbor and went over these plans. This was before the neighborhood meeting. This was well in advance of us even completing the design. So he met with them early on to see if they had concerns. They were concerned about the views of the carport. And so the owner came back to me and we added a 6-foot fence at the end of his parking space. We added a lattice wall behind the pergola that he intends to cover with vines to better hide that carport. We've also increased the header height on the side of that carport so that there's more of a finished wall that comes down to 8 feet instead of just the 10-foot header beam that goes across the carport. So there's more of a finished wall. So all he has is about 2 feet between the 6-foot fence and the bottom of the 8-foot header. So that's all he has of carport. He's basically asking for an enclosed garage, which unfortunately, we cannot do because an open air parking space is 9 feet wide. An enclosed parking space in the new code needs to be 10 feet inside, plus the 6-inch wall. We don't have 18 extra inches here to enclose that garage. He's also concerned about me saying that he had habitable space above his garage. Can we look at that first picture that I gave you? I think the issue here is a little bit of word choice. The garage that the neighbor has is very tall. It looks like an ADU. There is habitable space up there. It is not conditioned. It is not currently living space. No, the ones remember the 3 that I gave you on the flash drive? I think that middle one, yeah. So that's the neighbor's garage. The issue here is that what I'm trying to say is there is a structure already on the alley that does provide a precedent for an ADU. And this, whether it's inhabited right now or not, certainly could be. The neighbor was also concerned that the carport's located well into his backyard. If we could look at that next. It was a PDF, I think, that one right there. So you can see the existing fence on the neighbor's property. That carport overhangs by about 8 feet into his actual backyard. The space above that fence is his parking area and his garage. We have the minimum backup space into the alley and we have a minimum 20-foot parking bay there. We are encroaching into the backyard as little as we possibly can. And any other parking structure or space would be doing the same. The same for the we have a 5-foot setback from that property line, which is what code requires. The neighbor is unhappy that that's as little as it is, but that is what code requires. He's also saying that I said my design is not compliant with the rear alley setback requirements because I believed it to be exempt. It is compliant with the rear setbacks because there is an exemption for all alley loaded parking structures. We're not required to have a 15-foot rear setback to parking structures that come off the alley. So we're not required to get a variance. We're not asking for a special exception here. This is standard code setback requirements. He's asked about why can't the carport be fully enclosed, and that's simply because it would need to be much wider as an enclosed garage than it does with the carport. And he's asking about the tree that we're removing. That tree is a 15-inch caliper tree. When we remove 15 inches of caliper tree on a site, we have to replace it with 15 inches of caliper. The biggest tree we can get is about 3 inches. So that's 5 trees. We're happy to provide those 5 trees on site or somewhere else. 5 trees on a small site is a lot, especially when there's a swimming pool in the backyard and there's a swimming pool in the adjacent yard as well. We don't like a lot of tree litter coming down into those pools. So we really only have the front yard to work with. Again, my client is happy to put those trees wherever the city would want, but 5 trees on his lot is probably not what the city is going to ask for. And that's all I have. They'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? All right, none right now. Is anyone in the neighborhood association present and wanting to speak to this? Okay. Next, I'll go to the sign-up sheet, which we do not have anybody signed up. Is there anybody present wishing to testify either in favor or opposition of this project? Anybody online? Excellent.
Madam Chair, yes, we have Jesse Hamilton.
And Mr. Hamilton, if you can state your name and address for the record.
You bet. Jesse Hamilton, 914 East Bannock Street.
Thank you.
Generally, I just will walk out my back door and see a fairly tall carport. And it was necessarily the height just because I think it's to accommodate a Sprinter van. And I have lots of friends that have Sprinter vans and I have no issues with them. I like my neighbors a lot. I like the children that they brought into the community. But I will walk out my back step and the Sprinter van is going to stick up roughly 4 feet above the fence. I understand there's a need for higher density in Boise, and as a real estate attorney, I'm 100% for it. But I just question whether we want to encourage people in the historic East End to start parking their vehicles in the backyard. I don't know if it's altogether appropriate. But if ultimately this commission decides that's the direction we want to go, then I will be at peace with it. And if the landscaping that my neighbors put in is not sufficient, I'll have to landscape my side of the fence, and I guess I'll be prepared to do that.
All right, thank you. Anybody else online or in person wishing to testify on this project? No? All right, hearing none. The applicant has their rebuttal time.
Name and address again?
Yes, please.
Amy Allgaier, 1402 North 22nd Street. Just very quickly, the North and East End have always encouraged parking in the rear. That's why we have alley-loaded parking structures. And if you have an alley, you're actually required to take parking from the alley. So that's not something that's changed. That's just the way our zoning code is written right now.
Thank you. All right, any final questions for the applicant or staff before we close this? No? Okay. We'll close the hearing and we'll render a decision. Does anybody have a motion or discussion?
Madam Commissioner, I have one comment. sorry to come in late, but I'm not a zoning expert by any means, but I'm actually building a garage at 809 East Jefferson, right down from this. And in the new zoning code, they were allowed to have a 2-foot setback for their garage. And so that might give the applicant the room to have a enclosed garage. If that was something they would do. I don't, that they allowed it for 809. I would defer to Mr.
Yeah,
Jarvis.
so let's open this back up to staff.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Sales, just without knowing the specifics of that circumstance, side-loaded garages abutting an alley do have some different setback requirements depending on size. They can kind of slide to the rear and side property lines. So that could be this, again, I don't know the specifics, but there are some varying standards for detached accessory structures off of an alley. So if it was a side entry garage back there, they probably could slide it all the way back into the corner.
Thank you. Okay.
Again, I don't know the ins and outs, but it was quite a process, and that's what the city came back with. It's a alley-loaded garage, the 2-foot setback.
Okay. All right, we'll reopen it and hear from the applicant.
Amy Allgaier, 1402 North 22nd Street. TJ, it's very likely they had to get a variance for that. And because we don't have a hardship, we can get everything we need on the site without asking for a reduction in the setbacks. I don't know that they would issue that variance in this situation.
I just was bringing it up. That's all. Thanks.
And Josh could weigh in on his thoughts on what the likelihood of a variance would be if he wants to jump into it. But in my experience, it's unless there's really a hardship there, they're hesitant to issue something like that.
Excellent. Thank you. Final comments? We ready to close? Okay. So now we'll go ahead and close and we'll render a decision. So if we can have a motion or some discussion.
I think with addressing the neighbors' concerns, at least with the trellis and the vegetation, I think that will help immensely. I mean, in my neighborhood, we have RVs parking next to each other's houses, so I feel like a Sprinter van's not terrible. So I'm going to move to approve DRH 24-00171 with the staff's recommendations for approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Can we please call the roll?
Maloney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Abstain.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
5 in favor, 1 abstain, motion carries.
Thank you. Excellent. So we'll move on to item number 4, DRH 24-00173. This is at 1319 North 23rd Street, a certificate of appropriateness to alter the character defining facade of a contributing structure on a property in a residential traditional zone with a historic design overlay. Staff, can we please get the report?
This is the aerial map indicating where the property is located in the north end at the southwest corner of 23rd and Limp. Here are the existing and proposed site plans. The plan, or the plans, I should say, and the elevations. This elevation is just for that section of the property. We'll see that more clearly as the photographs indicate. There is more structure to the left, but the elevations showed us what we needed to see. And here are photographs of adjacent neighbors. The applicant has proposed to expand an existing uncovered front porch, slightly widening the stairs and extending the porch on both sides of the landing. The porch will be wood and elevated with support posts consistent with the existing construction. The structure is contributing to the district, and remodels additions should not create a false sense of history or false historic appearance or change the historic character of the building. The expanded uncovered front porch is consistent with the historic character of the building, does not create a false sense of history, and complies with the guidelines. Based on the above analysis, staff recommends approval, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for staff?
I have a question for you, Richard. The front steps that are there now, they're just concrete with a metal railing, correct?
That's what, well, they're not, it's wood frame.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, okay, wood frame.
So they've been replaced since the time of the survey.
Probably so if composite, decking.
So why was there not a recommendation to go back to concrete steps with a metal railing?
If it is assumed that they were originally concrete, then we just don't have that information to know for sure that it was originally concrete steps, and they're proposing a change. So to change and replicate, if that was a historic material, if they're going to change the width, then that opens an opportunity for a different material. The comments were made for a previous application. How is this different? And the difference is this is not a covered porch. So we felt that it was appropriate to add to the width and use a compatible material for the replacement, which is what has been proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, hearing none, we'll have the applicant approach and state your name and address, please.
My name is Jonathan Stewart. I live at 12287 West Dowdy Street in Boise, 83713. And I'm representing the owners. They got a hold of me and asked them to basically just alter that front patio. Not a crazy project or nothing, but they just like to take it a little bit wider along. It'd be 16 feet total. Right now it's about 5 feet wide, I believe. And then when I add about 2 feet on it'd be the south side going, like if you're looking at the front to the left, and then an additional 7 feet or so across the front of the house there, just to give them a little area to sit and enjoy their front yard. It won't come out any farther from the house. We're going to keep the same depth, just widen it. And right now, yeah, it is an existing, like frame structure. It's got composite decking and wood railings, and they just want to make it wider, build it with new materials, same kind of materials, the composite and the wood, stained wood. But yeah, that's kind of it.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you. Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association wishing to speak on this project? Name and address, please.
Good evening, Eric Hagan, North End Neighborhood Association, 809 North 18th Street. These residences in this area traditionally or historically had front stoops, not a porch or a patio in front of it. What is being proposed is more along the lines of what you might see on the cabin, with a post and beam type assembly going out in the front. The adjacent neighbors to the east and the west both have concrete stoops. And so we would be looking for something more similar to that. So either a singular concrete stoop or a enclosed, not enclosed, but like a solid base, basically.
All right, questions for Eric? None, thank you. All right, let's see, I don't think I have anybody signed up. Is there anybody present in person or online wishing to speak about this project? No? All right, the applicant has rebuttal time if there's anything else you'd like to say. Name and address really quick.
People bring up the concrete a lot. And we're just seeing, this is what they wanted. And so we're just jumping through the hoops to try and get approval. And just kind of sticking with what they already have at the property. I think in the past, it had a original concrete stoop. The door is highly elevated off the elevation of the ground. And so it will need some elevation. And so I don't know when this front porch was built, but anyway, that's it. I mean, yeah, just trying to get approval, that's all, and whatever.
All right.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we'll close the hearing and render a decision unless anybody has questions for staff or the applicant. None? Okay, so let's get a motion or some discussion going.
Madam Chair, open discussion. I know staff recommended approval of this project, but looking at the photos from the survey, there was a concrete stoop there, and the new proposal of a larger patio basically at the front is, I don't support it because I don't think it goes with the architectural style of the home. A little Tudor revival would have had little concrete stoop like Nina had suggested.
Madam Chair, so Commissioner Malloy, to understand, you are in opposition because both its material and size?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, or do we have a motion?
I can make a motion. I motion to deny DRH 24-00173 due to the size and materials of the proposal. They are not congruous with its original architectural design and create a false sense of history. According to the Secretary of the Interior standards, a more appropriate choice would be a concrete stoop that was shown in the original survey photos.
This is Commissioner Montoto. I'll second.
All right. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Maloney,
Nay.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Nay.
4 in favor, 2 opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. And we will move on to our next item, which is DRH 24-00184. This is at 1620 North Fifth Street, a certificate of appropriateness to remove the existing non-contributing structure and construct a new single-family residence on property in a residential traditional zone with the historic design overlay. Staff, can we please get the report?
This is the aerial map indicating where the property is located in the north end, where Fifth and Alturas terminate. Here's a site plan showing the existing and proposed residences. The existing is boxed in with the dashes and set within the proposed structure. Here are the plans. And here are the elevations showing how the garage is attached to the residence at the second floor, and also showing the rear and front facades. There's sort of a breezeway underneath a walkway in that area. So that's structure, and that's like air between. So if you can get the picture, as you can see from there, there's the open breezeway, and then that's the structure above. And here's the south elevation. Here are photographs of the existing residents and neighbors to the residents. The guidelines state that new buildings should blend in with neighboring heights and widths. The proposed building is 27 feet 8 inches tall, taller than nearby houses at 14, 24, 21, and 25 feet. Its width is approximately 34 feet, which is consistent with neighboring properties. The proposed residence with attached garage totals approximately 5,075 square feet, which is significantly larger than neighboring residences at 1,105, 880, 1,200, and 2,827 square feet. The proposed lot coverage is 32%, which is below the 35% guidelines limit. Whereas it should be noted that the existing residence has a lot coverage of 15%. While the siding and stucco are suitable for the historic district, the proposed zinc metal siding and standing seam metal roofs do not align with traditional materials commonly found in the historic district. The proposed windows and doors, being fixed casement and patio doors, do not match the traditional styles found in the district, and there's a lacking of symmetry and alignment seen that is seen in other buildings and are required per the guidelines, as the front elevation indicated. It doesn't have the traditional elements that one sees as far as alignments and the rhythm of the facade. The proposed roof pitch is 312, which is shallower than the recommended 612 or greater. That's especially true on primary structures. So that deviates from the traditional forms found in the district and the guidelines. The guidelines state as a policy that detached garages are required to maintain the district's character, but this proposal includes an attached garage, which is contrary to the guidelines policy statement. Overall, the proposed structure deviates from several guidelines concerning height, mass, material, windows and door styles, roof pitch, and garage attachment, impacting its compatibility with the historic district's character. Based on the above analysis, staff recommends denial, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for staff? No? All right. We will now hear from the applicant. If you can step forward and state your name and address, please.
Thank you. Derek Hurd, 9169 West State Street in Boise. And Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for your volunteer time and commitment to be here. I know it's sometimes long nights. I'm thinking 9:18, we're out of here, 9:14. My clients who are here tonight have lived in the North End for 15 years while raising their family of 5, playing in the foothills and mountains and working nearby. This new home will be for them all the things they have never quite found in remodeling a North End home. It will be their nest and forever home base. Working through the design process with them for the past 6 months has led to the home you see before you, a home of its time, appropriate for the site, and sensitive to the context in which it sits. I trust that you've reviewed the drawings in your packet, and Richard has given his presentation, so I don't feel I need to give you the whole architectural tour. We have a 2-story home replacing a 2-story home, which sits on a very interesting site in the North End. It has some unique characteristics for the historic district, the site itself. So I'll spend most of my time here responding to the analysis that is more in depth in the packet, and what Richard has just shown is kind of the bullet points of that. So I'm going to go through the analysis and use words from the code rather than just pointing at every different thing about the architecture of the project. So if you could, Richard, bring up that presentation. Great. So this is the west elevation, the street facing elevation. And so as we go through these things in the analysis, specifically it's height and width, mass and form, orientation and lot coverage, materials, window and door facade treatments, roof forms and materials, and then garages. So this site, if you remember it from the aerial, is on the far edge of the historic district on a street which is 80% from the 60s and 70s. This is not your typical north end walking along the sidewalk with landscape in between. The street face is a non-contributing street face in essence. It's hillside designated as well, so we'll have extensive civil and structural engineering code requirements. It also sits one of a handful maybe of lots in a historic district that interacts with the wildlands urban interface, which has specific requirements for materials and fire resistance that we'll be working with the city and actual building permit codes for. This home also sits about 60 feet from the street. It's a unique lot in that it's basically you're driving up a hill as you get to this lot on the far right of the street. So it's, again, not when you're walking your dog along this street, this home is well removed from the street. And then not only that, but the home is at a completely different elevation. The floor of the home is about 14 feet above the grade of the road at the south corner of the lot. It's not a typical historical street. And then as we get into some specifics, I want to include some relevant quotes from the guidelines that can help inform your views about this project and its place in the district. Creative solutions that will enhance the character of the neighborhood. These are all just direct from the guidelines. Boise's residential historic districts are diverse architecturally and have already experienced change. Continued change is therefore expected. Change is the natural outcome of an evolving, healthy neighborhood. New construction should be contemporary, but congruous with existing buildings in their setting and within the historical district as a whole. The immediate block face is viewed as the starting point for the site design of new buildings. And there's many mentions of the block face and the street front and the front facade. And I'll remind you, the context of this is 60s and 70s homes. The building site design should reinforce the established character of the historic district and the visual continuity of the streetscape. The character and vitality of the North End district is in its diversity, in architectural styles, size of buildings and parcels, and mix of land uses. The North End was generally developed as a working and middle-class neighborhood, so modest homes predominate, although some are larger homes. And then design goals. New construction projects shall recognize the importance of the diverse architectural styles and integrity that characterizes the district by considering ways to enhance, reinforce, and restore it through rehabilitation and new construction of buildings. Projects should continue the diversity in housing size, development patterns, and land uses. It is generally appropriate to borrow from the diversity of architectural styles in the district. And then from 5.0, it's preferable to design congruous contemporary structures rather than duplicate or mimic the design of historic buildings in the district. Also 5.0, best practices in sustainability should also be applied to the design of a new primary structure. And so now diving into specific sections, in the analysis, there was mention of the height and width ratio. Well, actually, no, there was mention of the height, not the ratio. And so what I'm pointing out here is that it's this ratio of height to width. And if we look at height to width ratio of surrounding houses and houses throughout the district, we see that this is falling in line. Similar range within the vicinity of the neighborhood properties. Add a new building on a site that is similar in height and width to buildings on adjacent sites and blocks. And that the big red block here is the summary of what Richard had, different heights on the block, 24 feet, 25 feet, 21 feet. This one is 2'7" taller than the one nearest it with one of those heights. Let's see. And then 5.2.3 is talking about breaking it up into smaller forms. So if you remember from the western elevation, we don't just have a tall 2-story building with a steep pitch roof. We have shed roofs coming forward. We have porches, we have columns, we have windows, we have upper porches, and various pitched roofs. We've really broken this up to kind of show a street front facade that is working with the district. And then these height and width considerations speak directly to some of the sustainability guidelines, talk about solar gain and solar access. Because this home is far north on the street, it has no northern neighbors. It's just the foothills. So there's no shading issues with the neighbors to the north, no solar access issues. And from what I see, to the home to the south doesn't have expansive outdoor living spaces. So I don't see privacy of outdoor patio versus outdoor patio. And then we've stepped the facades and porches back. As you remember from the floor plan, you know, the garage is set back a little bit further than the house. And then mass and form, in this part of the analysis, it was speaking mostly, if not all, to square footage based on this section. And I don't read in this section where square footage is a consideration. It's mass and form. And again, if you remember the western elevation, we have a mass. We've broken up the mass. We've broken up the forms. There's a lot of articulation and solid to void in that elevation to make it fit in with the neighborhood. And then maintain the similarity of building roof form and front porches. We have a front porch. And then we have low pitch roofs, which I think we're going to get to later, but there's neighbors on the street face that also have low pitch roofs, 312, et cetera. And then the human scale, again, we talked about that western elevation on the street facade. And then the code, you know, the guidelines, I say code guidelines, it's asking for something to be unique in 5.3.4. And then 5.5, alignment and rhythm. I only put this in to speak to 5.5.3, allow larger buildings by breaking it into larger smaller masses, pardon. And then we get into materials. And so when we talk about materials, there's roof materials, there's siding materials that were both mentioned in the analysis. I'm grouping them into one and talking about materials. I have more examples and references in my exhibit to roofing materials. There's a few siding materials, but in general, material is talking about the metal roof, the metal siding that was mentioned in the analysis. So one thing to mention about that is the significance that we are in a wildland urban interface zone. So that comes into play with spark arresting and fireproof, et cetera. And then we'll look at Exhibit B later because the analysis is suggesting that metal's not congruous with traditional materials typically found in the district. I'll show you that there are many examples of it found in the district. And then roof forms. Use similar roof forms, slope ratios, and materials drawn from historic structures. The analysis was talking about that it should be 612 in essence. And so you'll see from the block face photos, which you have in your packet, and I can breeze through here too, there's many roofs, front porches, et cetera, on this street face, not even counting all across the district, that are lower pitched roofs. Yeah, that was the 5.9.4. And then again, with materials, there's the sustainability code that's integrated into the historic code. So it kind of jumps around talking about sustainability and materials and then talking about historic and materials. But when we look at the material metal siding, metal roof, we see in the sustainability code that it's in essence asking for a metal roof, easy to maintain, proven to be durable, long lifespan, recyclable. Asphalt shingles are not recyclable. We keep using them. They keep filling up the landfills, made from recycled or repurposed materials. And then again, with the green building materials, it kind of repeats some of those suggestions. And then we jump back to roof forms. I'm saying this proposal is typical because there's 312 pitches on the site. And then in that slide. And then this one, the green check mark in the middle looks the most like our west elevation. So I'm highlighting that. And I on the windows and doors and facades and proportions and alignments and solid to void ratios, I've just highlighted some things here. It's street side facade. I don't generally understand what the analysis was speaking to, that western elevation should look like a historic home, or it should look like a have more double hung windows or something like that. It's a contemporary home. It's of its time. Casement windows are specifically mentioned as for the majority of neighborhoods developed. It's specifically mentioning casement. There was some discussion about different types of windows. We have casement, we have fixed, and fixed don't need to be opened. Casements need to be opened. And then I've just circled some of the shapes of windows that we have that are under the appropriate checkbox. And then the adjacent home, the closest adjacent home has no windows or doors because the facade treatment is asking it to kind of reference the adjacent sites. And there's zero void. It's all solid, the adjacent home. And then we get into accessory buildings and the analysis reference of attached being inappropriate. So my exhibit that I'm going to blast through at the end is going to show you all the congruous homes that have attached garages, historic, contributing, historic, older, non-contributing, passed through this commission, attached garages, passed through this commission, connected on the upper floor like ours is, connected on both floors. And specifically on this site, it's not alley loaded. There's no alley. So we have to come through on a drive. And in consideration of the historic district, we're not making a street facing, front facing garage, which many of the examples in my exhibit will be. So we've gone to the back of the site as far back as we can to put the garage to keep it out of view of the historic street front. And we've side loaded it from there. And then we've created a courtyard to take advantage of some open space. We've created a courtyard in between the main home and the garage on the main level. And then it's the upper level that's connected to provide more usable, livable space upstairs rather than taking up more lot coverage. And then the exhibits, here's the block face. Here's the adjacent neighbor with no solid void to reference. Here's the next neighbor, street facing garage, attached garage. And then here's the next home. This is the only contributing home on that street face. And then the next one is non-contributing 50s that loads from the other side. This is across the street from that, kind of a faux craftsman, newer build, and then going up the street, non-contributing behind the trees, and contributing on the corner. And then across the way, you may remember from the news, this is the 16-plex townhomes that go up on the hillside that's been approved, and I'm not sure where it is in process right now. There's our west elevation as a reminder, and now I'm going to do 200 slides in 2 minutes. So this is metal in the historic districts. These are all in Boise's historic districts. And I'm just going to blow through. Some of them are old original roofs, as you can see. Some of them are on the numbered streets right in the plain light of day. City of Boise. next to the historic district used metal roof, standing seam roofs. I think that was a repeat. I'm sorry. New construction, new home approved in the historic districts through the commission. Another one, and there's some in these slides that have been approved through the commission. There's some that just kind of went up and nobody's the wiser. This is my favorite original, I believe, 1905 house. So 1905, 1925, when the wood shingles, I don't know. But this is an old original metal roof in the north end. Metal siding, metal roof, approved recently in the last 2 years, metal siding, metal roof, metal siding. Approved through commission, contemporary home, full metal standing seam roof on 18th. Now we're going to go faster because I know you can keep up. And then this next series is showing standing seam metal roofs on historic buildings that are on the National Register in nationally registered neighborhoods. Just to show it's happening all across the country, and it's a smart choice. And then this exhibit, Exhibit C, is attached garages in historic districts, all with the zoning code of the historic district. And you can see some of these are of their time with the attached carport, or along some streets, you know, you can tell that it's a different era. But many of these are also on Harrison Boulevard, on Warm Springs Boulevard. Carports, attached garages underneath block walls. And some are aerials because I know they're garages because I've walked by them or because I designed them. Here's a nice one. It has a breezeway attached to the ADU in the garage. There's Harrison Boulevard. Can't say it doesn't fit in the district if it's on Harrison Boulevard. Get the point? I think there's 200. And this is all the districts, all the historic districts, many in the north end. That one is brand new approved. It's still got the stickers on the window with an attached garage. And then we're back. That was the neighbors. Another one brand new, as you can tell, it's being built.
All right, thank you. That's your time.
Yep.
Are there?
I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Stop clicking. Is there any questions?
Those don't count.
I'm a teacher. Don't mess with me. Your presentation is over. We are at the end of time. Are there questions for the applicant? No questions. All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Is anyone from the neighborhood association wanting to speak on this project?
Good evening again, Eric Hagan, 809 North 18th Street. While we are sad to see this little non-contributing farmhouse go, we have talked to the applicants with a focus on encouraging permeable paving as around the hill, as well as to avoid runoff. Simple things that will come up during building code as well. We also asked about or suggested shielded lighting, and those are some of the typical things that we put into our comments. There's also a big black locust tree that will be removed, and as this will also be a requirement of approval, we just want to be able to see the remediation of that as well. That's an interesting corner there at 5th and Alturas, and the what was it, 32 unit townhome project across? Yeah, so I believe it's actually 8 units that's on Alturas there across the street, catty corner from this project. They're duplexes, and they're 3,000 square foot duplexes that are 3 stories high. And as a duplex, it's 6,000 square feet. So if we're talking about massing in the general area, that project was approved. Nina was against it. This project that we're discussing tonight is nothing like that. It's got all the breaks and the massing and the different roof pitches to lessen that. And And for that, we're for the project.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? No? Okay. I do not have anybody on the sign-up sheet. Is there anybody present that's wanting to testify on this project? Excellent. Please state your name and address.
My name's Jen Berry, 1618 North Fifth Street. I own the property adjacent to this project. My biggest concern that hasn't been addressed so far is the stability of the land that this project is sitting on. The land is sand and smooth river rock. The entire fill, 10 to 12 feet in front of, would be on the north end, south end of the proposed project. That's fill of sand and river rock that came from the backside of the project over the years. My family has owned that property, 1618, since 1971. So we've seen all the changes, the erosion, the movement of that sand hill. Now, I think that has to be properly addressed in the engineering of the project. That's all I've got to say.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else present who wants to? Excellent. Name and address, please.
Noah Richter, 112 East 33rd Street in Garden City. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, staff, for the work that you've done tonight and in the past. I'm very familiar with the seat you sit in right now. I am definitely for this project. New construction within the historic districts should not be imitating history. So I think the design that's been put forth is very congruous to the neighborhood, and I think it would be a great addition to it. To concern the structural integrity of the lot, obviously there's going to be extensive civil engineering done, structural engineering done to ensure that the house is placed on solid footing. So I mean, obviously all of those things are going to be looked at very, very closely and taken care of. So just want to let you know that I am hoping for approval tonight, and we'll see where it goes.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else present wanting to speak on this project? Anybody online? No? All right, the applicant has time to rebut.
Yeah, I guess the only thing to address is the neighbor's concern, and I think Noah did a fine job of that. It is right now kind of a crumbling hand-built wall, basketball at best size stones, and the new stacked stone will be quite large and substantial. Civil engineering involved. We've had soils tests done already, so that'll be you'll get to know Noah well during the process as we develop those plans. And then just to mention that we did have our neighborhood meeting, and there was other neighbors there involved, and their concerns were the tree mitigation, which we've addressed, and then they were specific about the types of trees that we wanted to put in. So we said we'll do that then. So
Excellent, thank you. Okay, any final questions?
I have a couple questions, maybe one question.
Come on back.
Guess I'm full of questions tonight. So you talked about sustainability, and you talked about using, the metal roof for that. What other sustainable design did you incorporate into this project?
The architecture itself, the long datum line, the spine that goes down the continued length of the building there's clerestory windows on both sides of that spine. And the intention of those is to be able to have it act as a solar chimney, because down that spine on the interior is open space in essence. So we'll be able to open up the top layer and open up the bottom layer, and the air will flush, heat rises, and it'll flush out the top. That, and then the southern face, the solar gain from that in the wintertime that will be taken advantage of, because we are higher up on the site. We don't have a lot of tree coverage blocking that south side, so we'll get some solar gain there.
Do you incorporate any like solar panels or anything like
We
that?
haven't. Generally, we'll plumb for solar panels until Idaho Power says we're going to give you credits that'll make it actually less than 30-year payback, but we generally plumb for it. So in case something changes with Idaho Power and the incentive is there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thanks.
All right. We'll go ahead and close our public portion of the hearing and we will render a decision. Does anybody have a motion or discussion?
Well, I appreciate the modern design because that's one of my biggest complaints about new construction. I agree with staff for the overall size and massing of the project for fitting in the historic district.
As Madam Chair, as we talked earlier this evening, we consider each application on a case-by-case basis. And I think this is a very unique parcel. Not that every parcel isn't special, but this one is particularly unique in its siting and its location, its terrain, its history, its surrounding, its adjacencies. Generally, I'm in agreement with the applicant that this is appropriate.
Any other thoughts or comments or a motion? I think I'm in agreement with Commissioner Parks. Given that there's not a lot of contributing structures on this street, there's a potential for a lot of change, and it sounds like there's already change happening across the street with the large duplexes. I don't think that this is going to be out of character in this area within the next couple of years.
Madam Commissioner, I make a motion to approve DRH 2400184.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Excellent. Let's call the roll.
Maloney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
No.
Parks,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
And Sales?
Sales,
Aye.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Excellent. And that is what we have for tonight. Thank you for coming.